Welcome to my art form.
It's time for Post-Orthodoxy.
Hello. Welcome to my art form.
It's time for Post-Orthodoxy, a show about changing our minds.
Yeah, baby.
With your hosts, Dark and Ainsley Sevier.
Maybe what they believe about reality isn't all of reality.
What?
I know, right?
We're on a mission to have a better time with more people more often.
The question is more how do you get there?
Post-Orthodoxy explores strongly held beliefs, how those belief systems divide or connect people, and what might be found beyond those reality bubbles.
Hello, and we're live.
Welcome to Post-Orthodoxy Thursday edition.
Yeah, for some reason our song didn't work this week, and I don't have any way of knowing why, while also being live. So we appreciate you guys joining us, even though there wasn't a handy-dandy song at the beginning.
We have our disclaimer, though.
Yeah, let's talk about our disclaimer.
Our content warning and viewer discretion
advised.
So, some people have been upset by things that we've said. So I care about you and your experience, and I don't want you to be upset. So we're going to give you a little content warning. Mm-hmm. The opinions and views expressed on this program are subject to change. Future Dark and Ainsley may not agree with present or past Dark and Ainsley, and that's the point of the show. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we say stuff, and sometimes we say it boldly, and then disagree with ourselves later.
Or we find out that there was some information we were missing.
Exactly.
Which is why we involve you guys in these conversations.
We reserve the right to explore things, and this is why we do it in the manner that we do it. So we have a live stream so people can check us.
Please do. Drop a note in the stream in the center of the thing and tell us where you're listening from and how it sounds and what kind of a day you're having, because that definitely helps us feel like there's a reason to be having these conversations.
All right, so I've shared the video. I'm ready to do a show. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm ready. We're doing it. We're doing it already.
Okay.
So the way that we're setting up Post-Orthodoxy Season 2, everybody, is that we have a live stream Mondays and Thursday evenings. Monday evening is a free-range conversation with you all around a particular topic, such as trauma, or last week we were talking about pipelines and water. Or
drug policy.
Exactly. Drug policies. And then I also want to do a show on the nuclear family and how it's screwing everything over. And then Thursday, we bring on a guest, and that guest shares their life story with us. Ha-ha.
Live story?
Life story.
Oh, I like live.
Live story
live
of
story.
Their life.
Yeah.
And we talk around the same topics together with that guest and with you guys. Mrs. Yardy is tuning in.
All right.
And Sam Thompson. Thanks, guys. So
welcome to the show.
You ready to bring on our guest?
Yeah, let's bring on our guest.
Okay, exciting. Hey, guest.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm well, and you?
Oh, it's good to hear from you.
It's good to be with you kids.
Ageist.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, Joseph Myers. Joseph, how would you describe yourself?
Wow.
Yeah.
Haha. You can do it fresh right now, as if nobody's ever heard anything
think that's
before.
the way I would describe myself. Wow.
Fresh.
Oh. So confident. You're like,
well, I used to come up with all these made up words about, trying to describe who I am, what I do, multipreneur and
trying to let people know.
Yeah, those kinds of things. And I've done enough work, not enough to be healthy yet, but enough work on myself and assessment tools and all kinds of helpful tools. And I think these days I embrace the idea that I might be a force of nature.
Wow.
Oh, I like that. I use that myself.
You describe yourself as a force of nature?
Well, on a very basic physics level, yes.
Accurate scientifically.
That stands up to scrutiny. It's a matter of degree, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I've practiced the Enneagram for 20 some, maybe 30 years.
Wait, is that what you say? You practice the Enneagram? I didn't know that. thought
I
it
have
was
no
just.
idea how you say it.
I thought it was
That's
just like
what
a
I do with it. I practice
one-stop
it.
shop. Like I found out my Enneagram.
Okay, somebody explain Enneagram for folks that don't know.
How about Joseph?
Yeah.
Well, Enneagram is based on Ennea means 9. Enneagram is an assessment tool that's like the oldest assessment tool on the planet, quote unquote, and uses 9 personality types to help you discover maybe patterns that you've gotten yourself into, whether that's through your upbringing or however you get yourselves in patterns, and then helps you discover those patterns about your life and helps you break through them while using your strengths to do so.
That's the one that it looks like a sonar with a spider web on it. And however the spider web is laid out on the sonar is what kind of person you are.
Right. So I recognize the shape, and I thought that was one of those things where
I did too. I thought it was just a one-stop shop personality test.
You go online and you fill out a thing, and then you have 4 letters that you pick up chicks with. Right?
ENFP.
Hey, whatever that is.
No. The 4-letter thing is the Myers-Briggs, which
Oh.
I'm in no relationship to.
Hey, I really like Myers-Briggs. It helped me realize that I wasn't crazy. It's just I was all the way out here, and the rest of my family was in this sort of decent middle zone.
Yeah, I think these tools are really, really helpful if used appropriately and not used to put people in a box or used against them, but they're to reflect, I think, back to you, which is why I like the Enneagram so well. Reflect back to you, maybe some things like I said, patterns you've gotten yourself into that maybe you can use your strengths to help get yourself out of if they're negative patterns. So I'm 8 wing 7. Which, is one of those things that can only be described as a force of nature.
How do you find out what you are? Do you take a test?
This is why I haven't done the Enneagram yet, because you have to decide for yourself.
Oh, that's right.
Decide for yourself. Now, there are assessments to get
Wait.
started.
So you read, and then you try to figure out which one you are?
I think I'm an 8. And you're just like, what's the point of these sorts of things? I don't know already.
The thing is that there are assessments that you get started with that kind of give you a hint. But all of the Enneagram research shows that the assessments out there are about 60% correct.
Okay.
So you have a 40% chance that they're not right, which everyone accepts because the Enneagram is about you going, well, does that shoe fit or doesn't it?
That's part of the thing.
When you say you practice the Enneagram for a long time, have you changed? Has your number changed?
Do you move around on the points?
Not usually, but here's the thing: is that I have been told earlier in my life, and I also thought that I was a 5 instead of an 8. Now, the reason for that is both a 5 and a 7, which I'm in, or both an 8 and a 7. I'm an 8 wing 7. Head to the 5, either in health or in unhealth. So, like the 7 heads to the 5 or the 8 heads to the 5 when they're unhealthy.
So you tend
the
towards
7 heads
5.
to the 5 when they're healthy, and so I exhibited a lot of 5-ness in me.
But what'd you find out?
Well, as you practice it, you find out that really my patterns weren't around the 5; they were mainly around an 8.
Okay, so I'll add it to our list. This is my very
Something
official.
to practice.
This is my old roommate's mail that keeps getting shoved under the front door. And thanks. Do our
And you use them
Enneagrams.
as note cards.
Yeah, it's not essential. If it's essential, I take a photo and send it to him. It's fine.
Tammy Strong said that she's watching us on the big screen.
Hey, and she does have a nice new big screen now.
I'm so used to doing radio where the video is incidental, and now I have to look at the camera.
And there's nobody there.
And I'm just looking at a camera.
But it makes everybody feel loved when you do.
But right now, I'm not looking at a camera. Right now, I'm looking directly at Tammy Strong on a large screen TV.
Somewhere in the Midwest.
Yeah.
What part of the Midwest? The Midwest is a wonderful place.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I spent time there.
She's in Minneapolis, I think, right?
Wow, way to dox her. Jeez.
Oh.
What if somebody's trying to hunt her down?
Maybe in some other town with an M. I'm not sure.
I spent a lot of time in Winona, Minnesota. I love to say that, by the way. Winona, Minnesota.
Winona, Minnesota.
Winona, Minnesota.
Winona, Minnesota.
Anyway.
Yeah, I like it. All right.
Okay, so practicing. We still haven't got an answer on how do you practice.
Is it something that you read every day like a horoscope?
Not like a horror. I do read kind of pithy kind of sayings or reflections about 8s and 7s.
So that'd be like a devotional.
Yeah, you kind of look up like, what's a thing I could know about 8s today?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Sort of like Leos.
Okay,
Yes.
sure.
So like, consider maybe you shouldn't as an 8, we have a problem with domination. So maybe you shouldn't dominate every conversation today. Stuff like that.
Little reminders.
Yeah.
Okay. We read Rob Bresney's horoscopes pretty religiously every week.
I kind of like his take. He sort of does prose poetry.
He doesn't tell you that you're going to meet a tall, handsome stranger and come into some money. He just sort of talks about
That's all I want to read.
He uses
nothing else.
like quotes from artists and poets and tyrants from the past, and as sort of a feeling tone.
Yeah, he'll be like, this famous poet was a Pisces,
Blah, blah,
and
blah.
they wrote this thing. And I think, based on your astrological omens this week, that you would do well to keep their words close to your heart. It's like very take
nice.
it as you
Yeah, it's
will.
nice prose.
Yeah, I'm gonna share that in our
Bresney?
yeah,
Yeah,
Rob
we're gonna-
Bresney. Here's his note for all signs this week.
Oh, a note for all signs.
Oh, no, not a note for all signs.
Okay.
All signs. It's just all signs on one page for this week. Do you know your horoscope, Joseph?
I'm a Scorpio.
Okay. I'm going to read your Scorpio.
I thought I was a cock for a long time because I was told I was a cock. Turns out I'm a monkey.
There you go.
And the Chinese thing, because January is too close to Chinese New Year. So, like you thought you were a 5 and it turns out you were 8. I got to Hawaii and found out Chinese New Year was after. And so I did a little digging, found out that I was a monkey. And it made total sense because I was living in a treehouse, climbing trees for a living, surrounded by bananas.
The happiest parts of his life.
Yeah.
All right, Joseph, your Scorpio reading from Rob Bresney for the week of not October 23rd. What? Oh, no, that's just your Scorpio reading. Okay, for this week. I love people who inspire me to surprise myself. I'm appreciative when an ally provides me with a friendly shock that moves me to question my habitual ways of thinking or doing things. I feel lucky when a person I like offers a compassionate critique that nudges me out of a rut I've been in. Here's a secret. I don't always wait around passively hoping that events like these will happen. Now and then, I actively seek them out. I encourage them. I ask for them. In the coming weeks, Scorpio, I invite you to be like me in this regard. And here we are, seeking out nudges and critiques.
Now, do you find me that way, Ainsley?
Someone who seeks out nudges and critiques? I do. I think that you actively seek to better yourself all the time. And my experience of you has been that you specifically said, hey, fam, check me if you see some that needs checked. And that was in an employer capacity. So
yeah, full disclosure for folks that don't know, this gentleman, Joseph Myers, was the head of the art department.
That's going way too far, by the way, but okay.
This dude over here, this mass of pixels that I'm looking at, was head of the department, the art department, on the production that we worked on last fall. And so it was, I really enjoyed your management style. You had a vision of what you wanted to do, but you were always seemed to be open to other people having perspectives and taking charge of certain aspects. So, I liked your delegation style.
you're not just okay if people want to make a suggestion. You actively do seek out suggestions. So you've totally preempted your horoscope.
There you go.
Well, thank you.
Mrs. Yardy in Idaho is wondering, is there a specific source you use for your daily Enneagram devotion? Because I think she's also kind of really into the Enneagrams.
There is. I'd have to look it up on my phone.
Tell me, and
Can
I'll
I
look it up.
Can I do that on?
Yeah, this is what we make it.
Okay.
This show is what we make it. Yeah, you can look it up on your phone. You can tell me what it is, and I can share with everybody if you like.
Sure.
While he's looking that up, I got a question for you, Ainsley.
Okay.
So
go.
when we have guests on the show,
Yeah.
have we told them about the scavenger hunt part yet?
What?
Like in the, when you send the guest the information and says, hey, when you're on the show, try not to tap the pen on the desk so much because it's annoying, or make sure that you're not backlit.
Make sure you have some water.
Yeah, so you send out a thing like that, but we're going to tag on to the scavenger hunt part of the show.
I what?
That's where we ask Joseph to turn us on to the smartest person he knows.
Right. That's our season 2 meta theme.
Right.
Who is the smartest person you know, and we want to interview them.
Yeah, we're on a scavenger hunt for the smartest folks that can help us be smarter folks.
And our friends that tune in.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So
we can save that for the end of the show.
Yeah, you can think about it. And it doesn't.
Go to the Enneagram Institute, and somewhere on there you can sign up for their daily. Oh, it's under Learn, the Enneagram Thought for the Day.
Ooh, Ennea Thought. I'm going to share that subscription with Mrs. Yardy in Twitch.
Did you see that?
I did. I found it. I'm fast on the internet.
You are. That's an understatement. You can select 2, so you can select what you are in your wing if you'd like, or maybe what you are and what your spouse or partner or whomever you love or hate, and find out their daily junk.
Huh. Cool.
I'm having a hard time looking at the camera because it's just pouring down snow right now. And so I'm distracted by all the snow.
Oh, wow. It is a lot of snow suddenly here in Butte, Montana.
Yeah, our friend Don said, I think I need to fix my door, but I know if I take my door off, it's going to snow. And I told him to call me if he was going to take the door off so I would know. But I
that it was definitely going to snow.
He probably took his door off.
Oh, somebody washed their car.
Yeah.
So we would like to interrupt this program to share the exciting news that we've had our first sponsorship offer.
Oh, yeah.
For Post-Orthodoxy.
So Post-Orthodoxy Season 2, we have a Post-Orthodoxy Instagram page if you haven't subscribed to the Post-Orthodoxy Instagram page. And then we have...
someone messaged us.
Somebody messaged us because now that we're a successful podcast in Season 2, we're right here, Episode 4, Season 2. Somebody has already offered to be our sponsor.
That's right.
And we haven't... officially declined yet, but I think we're probably not going to do it. Did you find it?
So this is a message from Smooth My Balls, who said, hope you are good. My client needs podcasters to review a kit of their product, and they will promote your podcast.
Right.
If you are interested in teaming up with Smooth My Balls and earning while doing so, then message me. So
right. So we looked at Smooth My Balls.
Yeah, we're not into it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to give it an accurate.
They also sell the turf chopper,
test,
the pube muncher, and the hedge clippers, and that might be something some other podcast might enjoy reviewing. But it's not the sort of sponsorship that Post-Orthodoxy is looking for at this time.
Yeah, I'm open to having sponsorship.
Yeah.
But I want to actually give a damn about what I'm sponsoring.
What I'm sponsoring.
What's sponsoring me. Yeah, because you kind of are sponsoring the sponsor, right? You're basically saying, I endorse this thing in the world.
I used this thing and it was okay.
Right.
It reminds me so much of that Saturday night skit with Alec Baldwin, Sweaty Balls.
Sweaty Balls.
Sweaty Balls.
Yes.
I didn't see that one. But I do like Alec Baldwin.
Yeah.
He's a good actor.
So anyway, if you want to sponsor the show, you can contact us either on our Instagram, Facebook.
And if we're not into it, we'll scathe you publicly.
Oh, God.
I'm not scathing Smooth My Balls. Some people really do care about those sorts of products.
Yes.
or the pube muncher or the turf chopper. They're other products.
Well,
Some
they've
good
already
branding.
got more than they ever expected from this little.
There you
quibble
go.
that
Little
you've had.
free tidbit there.
Holy cow, they got us.
That's right. Oh no.
All right, if you're a terrible product that we do not want to endorse, please contact us.
For
Let
a
us-
free endorsement.
Let us know your terrible products. We'll give you free airtime.
It's like going on Shark Tank, and you know you're not going to get a deal, but you get all that.
But you're on
you know,
Shark Tank,
fame.
right? Oh my gosh, so funny. So our main topic that we were thinking of talking with you, Joseph, is the amygdala hijack, which we've been like, okay, we're going to talk about this for like the last 9 months. And so here we are.
Yeah, because you started to talk about it.
You're the
I'm
one
like,
that brought
no,
it up.
wait.
Don't say anything.
Come on the show. And then
Save it
like
for the radio.
9 months later.
Right.
Can you tell us what that means?
Yes.
Sure. So the amygdala is a very, speaking of smooth balls, it's a smooth, small ball type part of your brain in the internal. It's the oldest, most ancient part of our brains, and it's responsible for nothing else besides instant response to input. It is the first thing in the brain. When information enters, it's the first part of your brain that filters. And so it's responsible for fight, flight, or freeze, or fawn, if you add that in there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I do.
Yeah. It's responsible for safety, to keep us alive.
It's a fear detector?
Say that again?
Is it a fear detector? Is that
It's
one way
just
of
an
saying it?
anything detector. It
Oh,
sounds
yeah?
like. It sounds like what Joseph is saying is that is your gut.
Your brain gut?
That's your brain gut right there.
Okay.
It's the thing. And what we're finding more and more interesting about it is that it has the ability to shut down the rest of your brain. So if it finds whatever's in front of it, whatever information is coming through to it, it can literally shut down the rest of your brain so that it takes over the power and says, I don't care what else the rest of you are thinking, we're going to fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
I don't like it.
You don't like that automatic thing that
No.
it does for you?
No, that's my
Free of charge.
gosh.
It's when used properly.
I want to make my own choices.
That is you. The amygdala is you. You just got
Your
to.
amygdala is your choice.
It's like a dog. You got to kind of train it a little bit, right? Otherwise,
that's
it's
the
just going
thing,
to pee
is
all over the
that
house.
If we don't train our amygdalas, which most of us haven't even thought about it, right? Then what happens is it can come under attack, and the way that it comes under attack is that it gets oversensitized, and people then, media, commercials, whatever, whomever, people in your life, your own self, your self-talk, can actually hijack your amygdala to where what you're thinking most of the time, or your response to almost everything, is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So what you know is if a person responds immediately to you in one of those four ways, that it's their amygdala. They haven't thought through anything. They haven't processed anything. If their immediate response is to fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, then you know their amygdala is the thing that's reacting to you, and it's because it feels unsafe.
And that might not be because of me.
It might not be because you did anything unsafe.
Maybe I have a beard and something bad happened with beards in the past.
Correct. It can be anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're
it can
talking
be-
about trauma responses and triggers then.
Yes. So
Yeah.
when we talk about triggers, you're usually talking about, okay, we're triggering the amygdala because your amygdala has memory. It's intuitive memory, but it's not logical memory, meaning it hasn't processed all this memory that it has.
It didn't
It
decide.
just stores it in case it needs it to assess whether you're in danger or not.
Okay. It's so interesting with all of the trauma awareness that I've been incorporating and studying over the last few years that I'd never heard anybody else ever mention the amygdala.
Huh.
Well,
Because it's very interesting because, like, coming from the kind of Christianity that I came from, where mental health doesn't really exist and you really just need to pray more, there was always this disconnect between the mind and the body. The mind is what chooses to do the right thing, and the body is the thing that you need to crush in order to not sin, to go to heaven. And so if you were ever talking about, like, feeling tired, your body may feel tired, but your mind decides to do the right thing and work anyway. And so there was never a flow of connection between the mind and the body. And so what you're talking about is legitimizing mental health with the, like, this physical part of the body. Like, no, we're not just saying, oh, I feel triggered. Like, it's a legitimate chemical, physical pathway between this feeling of having been triggered and a literal part of your brain.
Well, your amygdala, from what I understand, and maybe you can help me understand this better, the amygdala and the hippocampus both can be physically impacted and have physical changes if there is repeated trauma responses that go on, or repeated trauma. It actually does have a physical impact on the brain. Is that your understanding?
Yeah. In fact, we're finding out actually that most parts of the brain can have some kind of physical impact
from perceptions.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to answer Tammy's question, it is a primal survival instinct. Yes, that's exactly what it is.
So, what's the difference between the amygdala and what people talk about with the hindbrain or the reptile brain or the animal brain? Is that a different thing, or is this
includes
a euphemism?
The amygdala.
It includes the amygdala. Okay.
Yeah. And in fact, the amygdala is a big part of probably what they're talking about, mostly in that area.
Huh.
Okay.
So key things for me already are, like, there should be more conversations around self-awareness, not just being aware of how your behavior reads in society, but becoming aware of how you feel. Because I think a lot of people don't really... Like, Dark is always pointing out to me, he's like, it's so great how you talk about how you feel. And I'm like, what man says that to a woman? You know?
I don't have to guess.
Right.
You can say, I'm having a bad trigger right now, or I feel terrible.
FYI, I'm tired.
Right. I don't feel like I now have to solve that thing.
Right.
Because that's also not a typical guy. You know, like, as a guy, I had to retrain myself to not being happy, I want to fix it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you just need to say it so you know what's happening.
Right.
And I'm learning to do that through you.
Well, and for me, acknowledging my own feelings is a massive step forward, because the way that I was trained growing up is that how I feel doesn't matter. It's only what I do. And what I do needs to be the correct thing no matter how I feel. And so actually being able to say, I really just feel really tired right now, and so I'm not going to be putting in my best effort, is acknowledging and being self-aware, which gives me grace, which keeps me from feeling badly about feeling badly, and gives my partner or anyone around me an idea of what's going on, so that there's just less tension everywhere. That kind of self-awareness.
Is that training your amygdala?
I don't know.
Yes, that's what I was just going to say. You are just training your amygdala to pay attention to your prefrontal cortex, which is the logical part of your brain. Why am I doing this? And it creates lists and logic around, why am I feeling this? And now I can talk to another part of my brain and say, why don't we communicate that? So yeah, that's the way you train your amygdala, is through your prefrontal cortex. Now, the thing about it is that if you're an amygdala hijack, you have to know about yourself and about others that the rest of their brain is probably already shut down. So logical thought isn't going to help.
Right. So you trying to rationalize with somebody who's been triggered is not helping anybody.
That is not the time to do it.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about that, and also like anxiety, how anxiety is related. I'm trying to build a map of these things. So there's trauma, and there's PTSD, which is trauma that has become chronic, a relived traumatic
post-traumatic stress syndrome disorder.
Like, you can have a trauma and then somebody can make you laugh about it and you can get over it.
Yes, I'm working on processing my past traumas so that now not only am I super trauma aware of what things make me feel badly so that I can be prepared to take care of myself if something like that triggers me, but I also, as I figure out why do I feel badly, where did it come from, and then I think through that situation and sort of heal it in my own mind, then I'm not as triggered by those sorts of situations in the future.
Yeah. So what you're doing is you're training your mind. Like you said, Ainsley, you want control of your mind. The amygdala actually gives control to somebody else.
Somebody
or something else.
What?
So for instance, if you feel attacked by me and your amygdala kicks in and shuts down, I've just controlled you, right?
Right. So the amygdala is the part of us that is in constant reaction to our environments.
All the time. So it's reactive. It doesn't have any, like, again, any logical reason why it's doing it. It's just, it feels that safety is at risk. And so I don't know where I was going with that.
No, well, if you feel the idea of letting somebody else have control of the situation, that can be something that people use as a tactic to win negotiations, to sell you something.
To win elections.
To win elections is to talk to a certain part of your brain where you end up in an emotional reactive state, and then it doesn't matter what the reason of that state is, because you've already been triggered into an emotional reactive state.
That's it.
And then in that state, that can be positive or negative. Some people can just give you chills because they're so compelling, but it may not be what they're saying. It might be the way they're saying it.
That's right.
So an example that we were talking about, that we were going to talk about on Monday that we didn't get to, was a situation happened that we observed where a father who had a terrifying incident with a dog as a child. We observed him traumatizing his child about dogs. Because he couldn't separate his own experience
With one dog.
with a dog from his past that had caused a massive trust breakdown between him and all dogs forever, with his child's experience, and had just decided that dogs are dangerous and you always have to be on the alert or else. And so when something happened with his child and a dog that was very minor, the dad broke down in tears and felt as though he had failed his child and failed to protect his child, and that he was terrified now that his kid was going to be traumatized by dogs because of what the dog did, which was nothing. It was just startling to the child.
It triggered his amygdala.
But it triggered the dad's amygdala, and the dad is like giving his amygdala hijack to his own child. Like how hard it is to process your own shit and not let it bleed onto other people.
So this is what they call, what is it, historical trauma?
I guess that's a kind of generational trauma.
Generational trauma. So like if you have been in a where you are easily hijacked because for certain things, maybe it's a dog, maybe it's a barber.
Right.
When you have a trigger around that thing and you're raising other people, they are looking to you for how the world is. And so it's almost like passing on, the trauma could be passed down. It feels like that's what's happening. The trauma, the kid can have a dog trauma that never experienced a bad thing with a dog.
Right.
Yeah, you can capture amygdala hijack in a crowd. If you get one or two people in a crowd of 50, you can get them, everyone's amygdala getting into that same process. So you can catch it, yes.
Oh, wow. So this just makes me so mad about everybody in control.
Well, it's a tool that's being used. These are tools that we know that are out there, and they get used on us. And this is something.
And then we spread it around for free.
Right.
for free. And here's the thing: is like you're doing, Ainsley. Is we we have to learn how to train primarily our amygdala, but our whole brain, how we want to be, not how other people are kind of influencing us to be. And so, for instance, you mentioned trust, that this was a broken trust with dogs, I think is what you said, right? So it's so interesting. And, I'm researching all about trust. And so trust and distrust come from two separate parts of the brain. Trust actually comes from the prefrontal cortex, and distrust comes from the amygdala.
So the amygdala is sort of primarily fear?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does the amygdala have instinctive positive reactions, or do instinctive positive reactions come from an even different part of your brain, doctor?
The positive reaction that it has is it allows things to filter through it to other parts of your brain.
Oh.
That's its positive response.
So,
now,
trust and distrust.
It is a very positive response, by the way, if you are in true danger to fight, flies, to do one of the F words and react. And there's no time, many times when you're in that kind of danger, to process it logically. Your brain doesn't have time for that. You've got to get out of the way of a gunfire or a knife fight or whatever it is. So that is a positive response, right?
It bypasses a logical thinking response, which is the moment you might die.
Yeah, it's like, let's think about this. He's kind of handsome. Maybe he doesn't mean to stab me.
Oh, no.
No.
Right away.
Right? But one of the ways that we can help our brain understand what's going on is to accept that many of the concepts that we think are on opposite ends of spectrums are really processed in two parts of our brain. For instance, trust. So trust is a prefrontal cortex. It's logical. We decide to trust. Distrust is in the amygdala. So we feel distrust.
That's the theme of the dragon movie we saw yesterday.
We just watched Raya and the Last Dragon. Oof. A totem for the show for sure. Everybody should watch it. It's the thing.
That's all about the amygdala hijack. It's a great. And
it's about community division and communities renegotiating trust with each other.
So it's easier
not to spoil it.
Yeah, they say it's easy to get somebody. It's easier to get somebody to believe bullshit than it is to convince them otherwise. And part of that is when going through, perhaps new information goes through the amygdala, it lands as a green light or red light.
Yep.
And then once it's come in as a green light, it just lets it come again. It's the metaphor of the vampire, right? So the vampire, once you let the vampire in,
you're screwed.
You have to hunt it down and otherwise it just keeps coming and going at will. I just went sideways on the vampire metaphor. I don't know if that really applies.
No, I get it. But I want to hear
more
about
the vampire is fear.
The trust and the distrust.
Yeah, let's go there.
Yeah.
Here's the real thing is that there's many concepts that can be held at the same time that seemingly are opposite. And one of the ways you can train your amygdala is to hold those seemingly different things at the same time. So if you can train yourself to to trust and distrust, which we do all the time, by the way, at the exact same time, your amygdala then begins to understand its role as it cooperates and collaborates with the prefrontal cortex and says, hey, you know what? I'm feeling like I should really that I should distrust what's going on here, but you're free. I'm not going to shut you down, prefrontal cortex. What do you think?
So that's how people stay in abusive relationships.
What?
The fact that your trust and your distrust come from different parts of your body, and we allow our frontal lobes to talk our gut brain gut out of doing what it's trying to do, which is tell you run away.
Yeah. So again, if you overtrain your amygdala not to respond in a healthy way, now you get yourself in just as much trouble
Right.
as if it responds, and shuts everything down.
Right. Yeah,
Your
we have a
brain
ton
has
of
to have our harmony.
we have a
It
ton
just
of
does.
people not trusting their guts.
Tammy asked if how do you know that your amygdala's been hijacked? How do you know, like, if I'm in a reactive state for much of my life, and there's that guy that always pisses me off, and there's that person, there's these triggers that I have from history or trauma or what have you, habits.
This is the hypothetical dark, by the way.
This is all hypothetical. Having those things so that I'm in a reactive state. So when I see this person, I become this way. When I see this person, I become this way. That's not me being in charge. That's me being yanked around on the leash of my amygdala, who's deciding how I will react, and not my thinking brain, not my rational brain. So how do I know? How do you become aware that you're being triggered? And when you're in a reactive state, how do you have the dialogue so that you are talking to the reactive state? How do you establish that
Joseph, do you want to fight over this one?
communication?
Do I want to fight?
Fight! No, you go first and then me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I think Ainsley is just practicing this really, really well. Like she talked about, you cannot listen when you are triggered and your amygdala is sensitized at its best and holding everything at bay to get you out of trouble. That is not the time to have a discussion in your mind.
Mm-mm.
You have to get away from that, and when you do, start assessing. Am I really in control? Or are people, when I respond, is my immediate response to new ideas or to new environments or to new, whatever it is my immediate response either fight, flight, freeze, or fawn? And if it's one of those, what you know is you have just reacted from your amygdala, which isn't always a bad thing.
It doesn't have to be a moral judgment about that.
Right.
It's
There's
awareness.
no judgment.
Yeah, no judgment.
There's no judgment in this. It's a process where we have to sit down with ourselves and go, why do I constantly feel like I have to fight? I mean, that's one of my, constant battles, is that because I learn best by fighting.
What does that even mean?
I mean, I love to argue with people.
Right.
Oh.
And it's not because I don't like them usually. It's an immediate response to get a response to learn.
I see. You mean like Grecian arguments, not like fighting. You punch you in the face.
Oh no, not that. Yeah. Greco wrestling.
Right.
Yeah, Greco wrestling. Yeah.
So it's your turn, Ainsley.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So if the question is, wait, has my amygdala been hijacked? OMG.
Right.
One of the themes that keeps coming up for me over the past couple of years of finally being involved in and observing politics and my fellow citizens' involvement in politics, observing it, and especially having been a person who started very conservative Republican for like the first 25 years of my life and then slowly shifted away from various aspects of conservative Republicanism towards more what you might call progressive things, some Democrat things. I don't identify with any one-stop shop party because I have a various sort of pick and choose morality. That sounds really horrible. I have to find a better way to say that.
Yeah.
But having started in one place and moved to the other, it is very, very easy for me to completely go back and re-inhabit what it felt like to have Republican and conservative morals, values, and belief systems about the world, which makes it really easy for me to empathize with people who hold those belief systems and state them publicly, Whereas a lot of my liberal, progressive, Democrat, et cetera, what have you friends have never held those beliefs. And so they don't know the history or the legacy or the internal monologue behind those beliefs. And so they just hear somebody saying, we need to protect the sanctity of marriage. And they say, homophobe. And I'm like, look, I used to really campaign very hard to protect the sanctity of marriage. And I know what it feels like. And this is not present day Ainsley saying this for those of you who want to chop this out and turn me into a bad person. There's
other reasons to do that.
Right. You have plenty of material. But what it used to feel like to me for like the first 25 years of my life was that I was trying to save my friends from going to hell forever for being gay. And so trying to protect the sanctity of marriage was something that I tried to do because I really thought people would go to hell forever and live in torment for being gay. And when you just have been like liberal, progressive, Democrat, or whatever have you your whole life, and you hear somebody say sanctity of marriage, it's a trigger that means that person's a homophobe and hates gays. And
now you feel unsafe around them.
Yes.
Right.
And you should feel unsafe around the person that says sanctity of marriage because they might beat you up. And so it's just this black and white. For me, what I have learned, and it's all coming back around to the question of like, how do I know if my amygdala has been hijacked, is that a lot of people on the left talk about a lot of people on the right as haters. They say they're hateful, they're angry. When someone, and this is my hypothesis and not something that I've scientifically proven at all, but I think that anger and hatred and offensiveness are tertiary emotions. If you are feeling angry or hating someone or wanting to bitch slap them with a really slicing comment because you're mad, that's the third thing that's happening. And the second thing that the underlayer of that expression is that you feel as though you need to be protecting yourself. And you feel as though you need to be protecting yourself because you are afraid of something.
That's right.
And in the case of people that talk about sanctity of marriage, many people are afraid for their loved ones' eternal souls. And many of them are also afraid of what it might mean for their own family's well-beings if, quote unquote, marriage breaks down.
So that's fear. Yeah.
That's fear of the unknown.
Right.
These are people that even though the LGBTQ plus rights movement has been going on for 60 plus years and even longer in other parts of the world, they have never experienced the LGBTQ plus community as anything other than something that you hear about or read about. And they don't know that, like, they've never experienced for themselves, just keeping with this example, that two men getting married and adopting children and living down the block from you is not going to hurt your children or your marriage. It's a concept that you have to experience personally and not something that can just be squashed into you, because the thing that you have experienced personally through your amygdala is your belief in your religion, and that your religion protects you, and that your religion tells you how the universe is, and that your religion says that homosexuality is dangerous and bad. And like you were saying, trust is in one part of the brain and distrust is in the other part of the brain. So I guess the center of all of that rambling for me is that anytime I notice that I'm angry, I immediately acknowledge that that is indicative of me being afraid. Something is wrong, and I'm fighting in order to protect myself. And so I keep an eye out for anger. I keep an eye out for even fear itself. I keep an eye out for, especially for me, I know that one of the biggest things that I do of fight, flight, I definitely don't flight. I definitely don't freeze. Sometimes I fight, but most of the time I fawn, which is me wanting to make nice so that I stay loved, because that's my core fear. And so through all this work, I've identified my core fear, and that informs the moments that I realize my amygdala is hijacking me, is when my core fear gets triggered, which is that I might become unloved, which causes me to fawn towards people where I'm afraid there might be some sort of disagreement.
And that's reactive.
And that's my reaction, is to fawn.
Right.
Because I might have offended you, and then you won't like me, and then I'll be unloved.
Wow.
Yeah. I should
Why
write that.
am I here?
I should write that down. No. What are you talking about? We're all here for reasons.
We're having
that's
we're having
so
a
wonderful.
conversation.
By the way, Tammy, just so I answer your question, yes, the amygdala does learn. It's not in a logical way, but it does learn experientially. So I love what you said, Ainsley. I love everything that you said. Full disclosure, you know this. I went to school to be a pastor. I grew up in a very conservative Christian, not like you did, but another part of Christianity. I still count myself as a Christ follower.
That's one of the most fascinating things about you to me, honestly.
And I still probably count myself more conservative than not, as far as politically engaged. However, the one thing that is just so striking, one day this just stood out to me about what I think God wants us to know about him. Most people would say, well, he wants us to know that he loves us. I don't think that was the number one thing. The thing that is most comes up when the voice of God enters through in a scriptural story, the first thing that's said is, do not be afraid. Don't let your amygdala be hijacked by this.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Well, but see, that's what happened. I think that's what happened with people just now. When you said, I'm probably more conservative, I could just feel liberal listeners going click.
Better stop listening to him a little bit.
Because we become so hyper partisan.
Yeah.
That other side, so I can disregard everything that you said now.
Or not everything, just the immediate, better take everything he says with a grain of salt now because he's sort of conservative.
Or there's the atheists who feel like Christians have destroyed all of everything.
How could anybody believe in a God?
And as soon as you start talking about God in that way, I can feel the click.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With a hypothetical listener who has now said, well, if you believe that, I can disregard all of your talk about the amygdala.
Which is coming out of fear that your conservativeness or your believing in Godness may somehow leach through the sensible things that you're saying and influence me in a way I don't want to be influenced.
Ooh.
I can't know that your conservativeness isn't getting on me. Which is how we thought about people who were not Christians growing up.
Right.
Even if they're a perfectly nice, respectful person, even because they're not a Christian, we can't be close friends because the unchristianness might get on us in some way we didn't mean for it to.
Yeah.
That's the amygdala.
That's right. And the wonderful thing about the three of us is that we play well together, right? And we have so many things that we probably disagree about, but so what?
I learn stuff from you all the time.
There's nothing about the two of you that triggers my amygdala, or I don't allow it to, in a way that keeps us from being not only civil but friendly.
I also don't feel I feel seen by you and heard by you. So I don't feel like I need to provoke a response from you to feel like I need to know who's who and what's what.
What does that mean?
They say the only true communication is that between equals. If you don't have regard for each other in the conversation, then you're not really having a conversation. You're just waiting for somebody to shut up and then saying your thing. And, this is and it's that tactic that people use to gain an upper hand in a sales or argument or a thing where you're not actually on equal ground with that person if you're doing that. There is an attempt to manipulate. And I don't feel an attempt to manipulate because I enjoy learning about you all the time. And I feel seen that you are open to my perspective without... I can actually feel your amygdala being open when we're talking.
That's awkward.
Sorry. I did a disclaimer at the beginning of the show. Should we do it every half hour? Or,
yeah. Listener discretion advised. You might not like the things we talk about. Sometimes we don't even like the things that we talk about, and we change our minds. That's the whole point of the show.
So I wanted to go back to the thing. You did your pitch, And he did his pitch on how do you know about the amygdala.
How do you realize if your amygdala is hijacking you?
So I think I can give an experience from my own life where I feel like I was experimenting with this. And by the way, I also want to go back one more step before I go to the story. Is for me, when I hear about something like God or love, or one of my early experiments with trying to manage my amygdala was I decided that I was a very judgmental person. I was raised in a very judgmental household, and that was the manner in which I moved through the world. It was us and them, bigger or smaller. I'm going to eat you, or you're going to eat me.
Right.
And it was I'm right or wrong. And if I'm right, then and you don't agree with me, you're wrong. And so I was trying to find a way to get away from judgment. And so I decided it's all love, man. I'm not going to judge anybody. And I ended up falling for some multi-level marketing scams and some couple of bad relationships. It didn't work out really well.
We have judgment around judgment as if all judgment is wrong.
Right. So for me, I changed. I realized that discernment was the better thing. Yeah. That I could discern and not judge. And that's what I think you're talking about with being able to hold two things at once. Maybe yes, maybe no. I will be the decider, but I need input. I need input from this part of the brain, and I need input from this part of the brain. And I don't know who's saying that, but I'm okay with that at this point. But yeah, discernment seemed a way to get around judgment because the amygdala is judgment. It's instant judgment.
But it's not moral judgment,
No.
which is kind of the only way colloquially we've come to think about the word judgment.
Yeah.
Is moral.
Yeah, it's probably better said that it's instant discernment.
It's instant discernment. But what about PTSD? If you got PTSD,
that's instant discernment. It's
instant discernment, but it has a negative aspect.
Unhealthy instant discernment?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Detrimental instant discernment. That's not quite the right word.
So
it's not very helpful.
Yeah.
What's not very helpful?
Post-traumatic stress disorder instant discernment is not very helpful.
Oh, no.
It's kind of like people who are inebriated. The amygdala gets so kind of drunk on having this hijack, this sensitivity, that all of a sudden it doesn't make good discernments because it's inebriated. It's high on being so hijacked all the time.
Well, that's a neurochemical. Important. That's what I call the neurochemical squish.
Ooh. Sometimes we do get addicted to our own trauma responses.
We get addicted to the fight or flight juice. Yeah. It gets squished out when the amygdala goes, "Hey, look out!" And then we get it's like a caffeine shot or something, and we get
adrenaline.
Like if you have PTSD and you're constantly being triggered and you're constantly in a fight or flight mode or fawn or whatever, if you're in one of those reactive modes, you can get. You said drunk, and I tend to use I would say high. That you get that hijack is almost like you could make a better choice, but there's a Jones going on for the fight or flight chemicals that get released.
That's right. Yep.
And that's why it's hard to get out of these things because it seems so boring to meditate. It seems so boring to be at peace because it doesn't give you the juice that being afraid does.
Well, and maybe
that's exactly it.
You can speak to this too, Joseph, but for me also sometimes I've been coming up against this weird culturally indoctrinated embarrassment around being okay. Like if I am in a situation where traditionally and historically I have a hard time, but I sort of think my way through it and I use my skills and my self-awareness and my self-soothing and I choose that I'm going to be okay with it, I almost am embarrassed.
Yeah.
And that's like a part of that's part of the fear of change, is that if I change, then it's almost as if admitting that I wasn't the greatest before, and that's embarrassing.
Well, not only that, we do know that if people change significantly, that their relationships will change because other people see them in a particular spot and will eventually push them away. There's a high rate of divorce when one of the people in the couple loses a significant amount of weight, for instance.
Wow.
Because
they're just different now.
the gap.
They're different.
Well, not even the gap. It's just that they're super different.
Yeah.
Than they were.
And so any kind of change like that, drastic change, it's not just that. I think all of us have this intuitive part of us, and I'm speaking outside the amygdala right now, but this intuitive part of us that just goes, you know what? My friends like me the way I am. And I might not be liked if I significantly change.
Primal fear.
Yeah, so, I think that speaks to one of the four, or maybe all the four fundamental life searches. We search for identity and significance, and we have a search for hope and a search for belonging. And as soon as any of those are attacked in a significant way, or we try to change our identity, our significance, the way we find significance, our belonging, our whole world becomes topsy-turvy.
Identity, significance, hope, and belonging.
Identity, significance, hope, and belonging. Yeah.
Cool.
Significance. Yeah.
So the search for identity is who am I? The search for significance is who am I to others?
You.
How significant does that go to others? The search for belonging is how do I connect with others? And then fourth is then how do I find hope for myself in all three of those other searches?
So Ainsley put up a little thing she sent to you. You shared it. Thanks for sharing it. There was a comment on your share of the post from a friend of yours named Grant. And he said, Mom hid cauliflower in mashed potatoes once, told me they were lumps. They were instant potatoes. That's why I have trust issues.
Who said that?
One of Joseph's friends on his post of the.
He's my best friend from my school.
Oh my gosh. Yes, and that lived with you your whole life.
Right. And in that post, Ainsley sort of gave an introduction to our audience of Joseph Myers, and these are maybe some things that he might talk about. Is there anything that, because this is not an interview, this is more of a conversation, and so we do have a tendency to veer off and out and about, but I think we've kind of stayed on track. Is there anything about this idea? For me, Ainsley, and our audience, is there anything about this idea of the amygdala hijack that maybe people can walk away with saying, maybe I can do that, maybe I can be aware of that? You mentioned the idea of building trust.
Right.
And is that related? Is it building trust? Whoa.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, the house is on fire. Be safe.
My house is on fire. Somebody's cooking something downstairs.
Cooking.
Yeah.
We'll bear with it. It'll be fine. We'll get our editor to cut it out. I'll take this moment.
I live next to the Berkeley pit.
This
it happens
is a
all the time.
great
Example of the amygdala hijack?
Well, of me training my amygdala hijack, that's going off like crazy. And my amygdala is not saying, hey, run.
Yeah, his house might be on fire.
Right.
You want to go check it out?
Well, and you're also not just getting super raging mad at whoever that is, which is a really great social thing to do. Yeah. I guess while the alarm's going off, I can say that we are looking for a podcast editor. We need someone. Right. So we have these awesome live streams with our listening audience who are participating, and we want to turn them into actual podcasts that people who are driving on the road can listen to at a later date. And so we need someone who has a few hours every week to download the video, edit the sound so that it all sounds good, and upload it to our podcast server.
Yeah, if anybody needs a job.
Yeah, like a paying job.
Yeah.
We want you.
Yeah,
please,
we need some help with that.
Please help us. Thank you very much. Is it still
Now
beeping,
back to our
Joseph?
show.
Now back to
It just went off.
Oh,
but
perfect
my
timing.
experience is it will go on again here in a minute.
Okay.
they'll close all the windows prematurely. Well, I'll be prepared with another statement then when the time comes.
Sorry about that.
That's
No,
okay.
it's fine.
But it is a good example. I've trained my amygdala not to respond to that. And we do that all the time. We hear sirens or whatever,
Right.
and we're like, oh, it's not me. I don't know what's going on. I don't have to leave the movie theater. It just the popcorn machine burnt.
Right.
I've been here before.
That's what it is.
Right.
Right. So we are already training our amygdala in little ways all the time. And one, I would say, we overtrain our amygdalas and deaden ourselves and divorce ourselves from our guts. And that we could do well to learn to re-listen to our amygdala and then develop healthy self-awareness and self-soothing techniques.
Yeah, just do that.
Yeah, it'll be fine. That's a great idea.
The way that one of the ways, let me say it that way, one of the ways that helps me is I'm a people watcher. I love observing how people respond and don't respond or whatever. And when I noticed that people would respond, particular people would respond in one of those 4 ways all the time to almost everything, then I'm like, oh, look at that. I wonder how I do that.
Right.
Look at that. And then all of a sudden I started seeing that, no, I'll pick a fight with people. And I think it's, for me, let me just say it that way. It's a fear of not looking smart, that if I fight with you, I can look pretty smart because, I can kind of break down your
argue, not physically fight.
Yes. Sorry.
Yes. Okay. No, that's okay. That's just my colloquial understanding versus your colloquial understanding. Fight.
So when I started giving that up for Lent, then, because there's better things than to give up chocolate for Lent. You could give up, amygdala hijack. So, it just started helping me when I saw people, for instance, a truck with Trump flags flying out the back of it and people going crazy. And I'm like, well, it's just a truck with flags,
right?
Isn't it? And the opposite is true, right? So,
right.
But particular people were just all up in a fancy over things that
I think about that a lot. Actually, is this sort of instinctive overwhelm reaction? Like, well, but how could you even park next to that person? And how could they do that? How could they fly around with that flag on in my town?
That's the language of the hijack.
Yeah, that's the hijack. Right. And it's like, okay, but in this actual moment, nobody is being harmed, but it's the representation. It's the general progressive belief system that all Trump voters are representative of harm to some group, either minorities or group, women or women's choice or LGBTQ or, and so when they see that truck, they're not just seeing a truck with flags, they're seeing a person that is deliberately aligning themselves with harm.
Yeah.
And we talked about on our show on Monday that I had a theory that
hashtag not all Christians, hashtag not all Trump voters.
Right. That not all Trump voters, but a significant a number that I have met directly who are Trump fans. I would not even say Trump voters. They're Trump fans. And they used Trump as a sort of political version of the dead baby joke to elicit that hijack.
Yes.
From the liberal elite, because they don't know how to deal with the liberal elite, because the liberal elite are better educated, or they're snootier, or they just don't get us. So to hijack their amygdala by flying a Trump flag or saying that you love Trump is a power play that is used by some people.
Yes, some Trump voters that we have met and known use their Trump fanishness to deliberately hijack progressives' amygdalas.
Yes.
Of course. And the other way around, right?
Yes. To say that people will have all kinds of opinions on guns, even though they don't really care, in order to watch a conservative person start to turn red in the face. Because you're talking about a sacred Second Amendment right. This is why we're in this country. You know, like they automatically see you as a threat to their freedom, and that's a joke. The people, the people on the left, oh, my freedoms, but to them that is a foundational building block of our freedom in this country. So when you start talking about that, you might as well be saying that you don't like this country in their brain,
right? Or that you just want to be overrun by commies.
Right.
Yeah. And maybe, we could take a clue from this. And every time we enter a room, we should say, do not be afraid.
I like that.
You mean for yourself?
My views here aren't to crush anyone here. They're not here to bash anyone. Don't be afraid. I actually really, really kind of like you guys. But it'd be fun to discuss these topics.
If we can discuss them in a way that keeps everybody from feeling afraid.
Right.
And
by the way,
we're not going to do
that.
that.
Link in the chat, Ainsley, for Ian Cron's site, which is a good one for the Enneagram.
Awesome.
Nice.
Sweet.
Well, we would like you to be a regular guest on the show if you'd like to.
Yeah.
We'd like to sort of circle back around through you, and I want to
have difficult conversations. Like, I really do want to. We kind of have been very safe and gentle. We've been weirdly, like, a lot of. And I'm sorry, I really do want to say it. Sorry.
Say it.
So, like, a lot of people think post-orthodoxy is highly offensive and cavalier, and we ride the ragged edge of disaster for no good reason. No good reason. And I actually think of us as being pretty damn safe and pretty balanced. And I would actually I feel as though with you maybe assisting us, Joseph, we could have some really sticky conversations because you are willing to work with your amygdala rather than be overridden by your amygdala. When you say things like, why can't I, as a somewhat conservative person, just walk into the room and say, hey, my views aren't here to squash anybody. It's because when you say I identify as somewhat conservative, people see you hate minorities, you want women to have babies they don't want to have, you don't think gay people should be able to be married, you want to put a wall up and have children in cages in Texas. This is what people hear. And so when you say I don't mean you any harm with my conservative beliefs, they're like, you are literally representative of harm. And this is not Ainsley saying this. This is Ainsley
It's the stereotype.
representing the stereotypical progressives' opinion of the stereotypical Republican, if that makes sense. And so, like, I know a lot of conservatives who are like, hey, why can't I not just vote my conscience? I'm not trying to do anybody any harm. But the problem on the left side, and I would really like to have a sane representative conversation with someone who identifies as somewhat right-ish, is that it's sort of like being, when I was a conservative, and people would be like, well, but I'm a Muslim. It doesn't mean I want to bomb a building. They're like, but you're deliberately practicing a religion that aligns itself with harm. That was the story when I was a kid growing up a conservative Christian, is that if you knew better, you wouldn't be Muslim because Muslims are terrorists. And the left thinks about the right that way. If you knew better, you wouldn't be conservative because conservatives want to kill the gays and the minorities and pay women less and blah, blah, blah. And it's a stereotype. And I want to have those conversations productively.
Yes. So
I'm up for it.
That's good. I think we can still stay friends.
Yeah.
Oh, above all else, we're friends.
Okay, good. So I proposed something earlier, and I don't want to put you on the spot, and you don't have to answer right now, and this may not even be a part of the regular show, but what we're looking for is a daisy chain scavenger hunt for the smartest people we know. So, and it doesn't matter if it's epidemiology or economics, or I want to find somebody who can tell me what's going on in the cryptocurrency world.
Yeah.
I want to find somebody who can really speak intelligently about viruses, not the coronavirus. viruses, how viruses work, how we can protect ourselves from viruses by having a healthy immune system. Things that are out. These are the things that I'm not hearing in the pandemic narrative. Is very little education about what a virus is, how it works. Very little education about the history of our DNA with viral infections that have shaped who we are. I want to find out. I'm scared shitless of economics and money, and I'm trying to get over that. So I actually want to learn some tools so I don't feel like a foreigner when somebody starts talking about something financial.
Or just have your brain like go away into another room and just be like, no, thank you.
So somebody who has a geological theory I haven't heard yet, I'm looking for people who know more than I do on some subject, and we are wanting to build a sort of community, and rather than going off and finding somebody else somewhere else, we're taking references. So whether today or you don't want to call somebody out that may not want to be associated with the Post-Orthodoxy show, but
yeah, don't like say their name on here and then they'll be like, oh no, I could never.
But we want you to think about it. Like, who do you know that could turn us on to some stuff we don't know?
Yeah, besides the two of you.
Oh, let's definitely have him back as a guest again.
Yes.
See how I got past your amygdala? It's so easy to do.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah, there might be some people.
You know some smart folks?
Maybe.
Well, yeah, we're looking for smart folks.
Sweet.
And thanks for coming on the show. And I don't want to just wrap it up, but we're sort of reaching, I don't know.
It's been an hour and 20 minutes.
Oh, it's only an hour and 20. We're
great
good.
Conversation. I am going to drop a link here real quick to our YouTube channel because if we can get 100 subscribers, then we can make our own custom youtube.com/post-orthodoxy. Right now, it's just a mumble jumble of, like, we can't share it with anybody because it's just UCYC11Z8 UI,
right.
you know, like, bleh.
So yeah, we're going to take a little moment, if you don't mind. Since we're on YouTube. It's Post-Orthodoxy on YouTube.
Yeah, you can search us and we'll come up. It's just eventually
we need somebody to like our page.
If you like us on YouTube, then eventually we can do youtube.com/post-orthodoxy, and then we'll be easily findable all over the internet, wherever internets are sold.
Are there any comments that we didn't get to? Is there any statements or comments that came up that we are leaving our listening audience hanging?
We're having some really funny things going on in the comments. Tammy Strong says, yes, because Christians were never violent.
Uh-huh.
Right, going back to my Muslim Democrat metaphor.
Right.
But in general, I think between you, me, and Joseph, we've been catching the questions and the meaningful stuff. Not that it's not meaningful, but, you know, like, how do I say? Anyway, thanks.
Way to discern there.
Oh, Tammy Strong says, Seviers are my favorite teachers. And Chef Boyardee said, favorite teachers in all caps. That's where I start getting really nervous, and I think maybe I should quit.
That's your amygdala getting hijacked.
No, it makes me think, is it my amygdala?
Yeah.
No,
yeah, because your
like,
mom said, don't be getting up in front of the camera and stuff.
Yeah, they're like, you guys are the best. And I'm like, oh, no, this is bad.
Doom is on its way.
This is really bad. I'm probably an asshole. I do. I'm like, no, I've tricked them all. This is bad.
There's no probably about that. That's what's so charming.
See, that's the kind of stuff that I just internalize and fake through the rest of the thing. Where she says, I am feeling like a jerk because people like me.
Yeah. This is really uncomfortable because my mom made sure that I knew that I was not special. And that if anybody was giving me positive attention, it was because I was full of myself.
So yeah, that's that's PTSD, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is an amygdala memory, is what that is.
Well, it's living strong in the present day. And the thing is that the dumb part of this is I love teaching. I teach music. I taught hundreds of kids, not hundreds, like 100 kids how to use the radio at KBMF. Like I love I love teaching. I did like an informal impromptu marriage conference. Shut up. I love teaching. I love taking things that I've learned and thought about and using them to help people. And that's all I mean. It's not me saying I love being the person that knows more than other people. So why, when people are like favorite teachers, am I like, oh no, what have I done? Like,
think of it as like we're trying to rewire the way we think about money by using the term currency as not something we have to acquire and hold on to, but something that allows us to
we conduct it,
manipulate the world through the current.
It comes to us, and then we let it onwards to the things that make our lives better and other people's lives better.
So maybe you can take those compliments as somebody who is a conduit for some smart folks, because we're looking for smart folks.
Right. Smart folks come to me, and then I convey them to my beloved listeners.
Very good. Now just say that 100 times and talk to your amygdala.
I'll put it on a 3x5 card and put it on my bathroom mirror.
Bite a drink, whatever.
Put it up at your favorite coffee shop.
That's right. Write it on a dollar bill and stick it to the ceiling.
That's a federal offense.
Is it?
Yeah. Do I need to read our disclaimer again?
Every bar ever.
Yeah, it's defacing government property or something like that.
The opinions and views expressed on this show may or may not even be our opinions or views, and might not even be our opinions and views the next time you see us. Well, and that's the point of the show. Try not to get mad.
Try not to get mad. That's
your amygdala.
That's how you train your amygdala, is try not to get mad,
yeah,
bro.
That's true. Right?
Try not to get mad, bro.
Don't be in like if you logically go through an argument and it angers you, that's probably a good thing, that your amygdala and your prefrontal cortex has actually collaborated to understand why you're upset, and maybe there's a great reason for you to be upset. So it's not just getting mad. It's the context.
Reactively mad.
Yes.
So the difference between being angry and then like having a rage fit.
Yes.
I feel like a rage fit is a reaction, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of logic or reason going on in that. But I think there's something to righteous indignation. There's something, I think anger is really, for me, I feel like anger has always been something that tells me, it's like the dog that barks. If I'm angry, then it's like, then I need to go see what the dog is barking at and figure out if it's a threat or if it's just a kid on a skateboard. Yes. Otherwise, if I don't go and check on the dog just barks at everything all the time.
Right.
And so I used to like, I'm not going to get angry because I thought it was the same thing as rage. But then I realized
all anger is bad.
By not acknowledging my anger, I'm not acknowledging what I am reacting to.
Yeah.
And so I am further hijacked.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you're writing a book about trust issues right now specifically, Joseph?
Yeah, about trust and distrust, and how to actually develop or build trust in a world that is or in a culture that is a culture of distrust. How do we do that again? And can I just go off topic for a second?
Please.
No, go. This is what we're doing all the time. Off topic.
That's what our show.
So one of the interesting things for me, and I'd love to know your viewers and you guys, because I don't have all the words around this yet, but it's how we measure trust and distrust. And let's just take measuring trust as the topic that I'll ask about. So right now, the way it seems to me when I see people trust, there's three ways we do it. By depth. So I trust someone this much.
I'll trust you with my car, but not with my wife.
Then that we trust people by volume. So, for instance, I can jump in a lift with a person I don't have any idea. I trust them this much
just
to
enough
drive
to get
me
in the
around
elevator
safely.
Oh,
right. Right, the elevator. Right.
No, he's saying lift like LYFT.
Oh, like a taxi.
Yeah, like a cab. Yeah.
I thought I was being British about an elevator.
I just automatically give them this trust. So I have a pretty deep trust for them. but I don't have a lot of volume of trust, meaning it's just like this small cylinder that fills up really, really quickly. And I trust them that, but my friend, because of years or whatever, may have this big swimming pool full of trust. It may be at the same depth, but the volume is much larger. And then there's one other thing that we measure, and it's context or the weight. So for instance, on the moon, I weigh a lot less. The context changes, right? And so depending on the context to how much this volume and depth, how weighty it is on my trust.
I have people, for instance, someone that I trust very deeply as a coworker or as a colleague, someone that I trust very deeply as a colleague, but have issues trusting them in a friendship.
Yes.
Like I know in a workplace,
But in the workplace they can handle it.
We are golden.
Right.
It's gonna be great. But
right.
yeah.
So that sounds like I trust them deeply, but it just doesn't have a lot of volume.
Not broadly.
No,
and it doesn't have a lot of weight in another context.
Right.
And so I'm trying to put words around that and concepts and ideas because it feels to me like that is the way we experience trust, distrust, or in all kinds of other things. But that's primarily what I'm writing on now is.
Are those three things your theory?
Yes.
Cool.
And that's the book you're working on.
Yeah. And then how, because trust and distrust come from different parts of the brain, we can hold a high level of distrust and a high level of trust at the exact same time, or low levels of each of those at the exact same time. It's not a seesaw effect. Like the more you trust, the less you distrust. And what does that actually, how does that play out in our lives? So when I first started thinking about this, was when in the early, when was it? Would have been late 80s. Were you guys born in the late 80s?
I was born in 69, yo.
Okay. I was born in the late 80s.
Yeah.
Born then.
Yeah, I was born then.
Yeah.
So in the late 80s, the mother of my daughter and I were separated. And she would come and she would be irate with me saying, I just don't trust you. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. And, that kind of language. And then after all that fiery conversation, she would hand me the little hand of her most precious thing in the world.
Oh my goodness.
For me to take over a weekend.
Two different things going on at that moment.
Yeah. And for me, I kept thinking, wow, that's I'm the kind of person where I'm like, oh, that was interesting. I didn't pay attention to what she was saying, which I should have been. It was interesting, the difference. Why would you, if you didn't trust me, why would you give me? So that's where this whole thing started. And so I actually for years thought I was crazy because all research would tell you that these two things, trust and distrust, are connected in a seesaw kind of way. And it wasn't until maybe 2.5 years ago that we actually discovered through brain science that they are two separate concepts in the brain.
Wow.
And then that gave me kind of the legitimacy to then start writing and researching them as two separate things. So if we can get to a culture, or back to a culture, let me say it that way, that holds trust and distrust together over political views, over religious views, or whatever views it is, but begin to trust people as human beings, not just concepts, while at the same time having a real harmonious distrust because of what they do believe could actually cause harm. And how do we do that? And so that's what kind of I'm writing about.
That sounds important. It does.
Not interesting, just
No,
important.
it's very interesting, and important because
It's not a black. We live in a black and white world, and you're talking about a non-binary situation.
and we're definitely not learning to trust our fellow citizens more these days.
No.
We're hand over fist plunging further and further and further into distrusting our fellow citizens and neighbors, at least on the left. I have to say that because the more people on the right that I talk to, the more I realize they're just not as chuffed, not as bothered.
Well, I have a theory about that.
Yeah, what's your theory?
And I love your theory about this.
What is
Wait,
it?
you haven't even heard it.
You know, Dark and I talk outside of just us.
Well, I have one theory, which is I think this might be different, and you can tell me what one you're thinking about, because I've been thinking about this recently, which is that in the political spectrum, which is it's just a black and white. It's not much of a political spectrum on the news. There's only the vocal minority on one side and the vocal minority on the other side, and all the undecided, which is like 70% of the rest of the country, don't really matter. You have to have an opinion, or you're not in the fight, buddy.
Right.
And
that perspective comes mostly from the left that is thinking
I
about the harm.
Right. So I feel like what happened in the 80s with the Reagan Revolution, which is where we crossed the Rubicon from paleo-conservative to neoconservative. And the neoconservative was defined by this, what some would say, the unholy alliance with the evangelical voter, which had not been a voter. And so they woke up this evangelical voice that had decided it was not going to be in
We're just here to get to heaven.
Right. And when they woke up that voice, the Republican Party then had to keep feeding that fundamentalist style, which is very amygdala hijack. It's very evil or good or black or white or right or wrong or us or them.
That specific kind of conservatism.
That specific, not all Christians. I'm talking about the evangelical that were not getting involved in politics. When that alliance was made, then the rest of the conservatives or the Republicans that didn't consider themselves that actually believe in the separation of church and state and don't really have a strong opinion about the drug war, or there's a spectrum within that. They became lampooned in with the evangelical voice, because they needed to energize that voice to get Bush in, is what they did. They needed to energize, and so they spoke specifically because they already knew the rest of the Republicans were not going to vote Democrat. So a lot of the Republicans then had to be associated with this sort of theater that was being done to keep the evangelicals on board by dangling the carrot of abortion or gays or something on it. And so they've already gone through the dark night of the soul politically.
Who's they?
I'm going to talk about the conservatives.
Okay.
Because they got associated, all of them got associated, fiscal atheist conservatives suddenly got associated with the pro-life movement.
Right.
Politically, right? And so they had to eat crow. They just had to go along.
All people on the right want to keep women from getting abortions.
Right. And so what's happening with the left now is we're getting that medicine. We always follow the right. We always so the right's strong on crime, and the left's well, I guess that works. We'll get strong on crime. And they followed this reactive, going along with the amygdala hijack. They followed this reactive mode and suddenly have become their own stereotype of the snowflake that cannot even bear to hear the word conservative. And they are going through new traumas. 2016 was a new trauma where they couldn't believe it was happening. Whereas the right has already been sort of scabbing over some of the wounds of these political shifts that happened in the 80s. I don't know what you think about that theory. Being a conservative.
I think I definitely don't think you're wrong. The theory that I was pointing to is you at one point said, hey, listen, the left's amygdala has been hijacked because at the political environment and the character that's actually the poster child for that movement at this point, all they are about is triggering the left.
Right.
And
right.
so the left has like a post-traumatic response.
Specifically to that small group of people that like to be triggery.
Yes. Over the character that was chosen to be the face of this movement.
Mm-hmm.
And conservatives really kind of didn't have that post-traumatic response because, oh well, like people ask me all the time, how can you be conservative and be a Christian nowadays?
They do?
What?
That's so fascinating because the left is all like, well, but obviously conservative equals Christian and vice versa, except for a couple of those Christians that like gays.
Yeah, so it's, but how can what they're really asking is how can you follow Trump and be a Christian?
Right.
Yes.
Because Trump is that has been
right.
That unholy marriage.
Right.
Yes. So
if you were a Christian, how could you ever vote for him?
Face.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
And how can you?
Well, it's
I mean, just to ask the question.
And this is
there's a large difference between my conservative world in my own head and someone's political agenda to constantly poke the pig.
The mainstream portrayal of the conservative world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway, it's not so black and white to me,
Right.
because if anybody knew me,
right,
how could you actually look at Joseph and call him Christian? I mean,
because you don't meet some of the metrics that people think should be.
Haven't you seen? So anyway, the theory that you presented to me early on, Dark, was that this post-traumatic response of liberals over the character that was Trump, where conservatives really didn't have that. I mean, we just,
he's nasty, but we gotta vote for him.
Obama was this thing that I think for a lot of people, even though I know a lot of people who voted for Obama also voted for Trump.
But I was conservative when Obama was happening, and it was not like, oh my God, Obama. Really? Because we didn't swear also, but but it was like, he'll be gone in 4 or 8 years anyway. It was like, thanks, Obama, was the mainstream thing in the conservative circle. It was like, the politics were just not that big of a deal.
Well, Obama didn't poke the pig all the time.
Even though Obama was trying to kill babies.
Right.
Obama was pro-abortion.
He didn't tweet nonsense out into the world. He did.
I think you're right. I think you're right. And what I meant was there was a much longer arc. There was a flattened curve from the beginning of Reagan to Obama, because Clinton was basically he was fiscally Republican and crime Republican,
Yeah.
And so there was that sort of, but there was still the political attempt to hijack people's amygdalas by saying, if you're voting for a Republican, you're voting for this. And they hold up it's like any kind of propaganda. You just have to show the most extreme thing is Republican.
If you vote for any Republican, you hate gays.
And then what happened with the Trump thing is, I think a lot of people who are consider themselves on the left but had never been politically active suddenly threw themselves into politics because they got thrown into hot water. Because
like you said, Trump does poke the pig all the time.
God,
and he would constantly flaunt his not very presidentialness.
So I think what's happened to the left is a much more potent traumatic effect.
Yeah.
But there's different kinds of trauma. There's systemic trauma, right? There's slow abuse is trauma over time. But I think the event of Trump was what's that kind of trauma? That's like
that's an acute trauma.
An acute trauma.
Suddenly.
And that's why, like, I've lost so many people that I used to be able to talk to because the trauma is cute. The trauma is cute.
Acute.
The trauma is cute. You know what I'm saying?
I think everybody understands.
The trauma is acute.
Yes.
And because of that, it's become exceptionally more difficult for me to grapple with how I'm dealing with my friends because I'm not talking to their trauma.
They are in a trauma
I'm talking
state.
to a friend of mine who I knew pre-trauma.
Yeah.
And now they're traumatized. So this show is very important for me because I want to figure out how to build back trust with people who are afraid of me now because I don't share their trauma.
That's right.
Because if you were a safe person, you would be just as
right. Why aren't you screaming the sky
out
is
of
falling?
whack?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you really cared, you would be out of whack. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things outside of just politics that are, the same thing. It's just easy to talk about this because we've all kind of experienced it
right.
firsthand. But listen, again, we have to somehow get to the point where we all take a position, or most of us take a position when we walk into a room is, hey, don't be afraid. I come in peace.
Right.
I come with my own ideas, but I'm not here to beat someone or to. I just want to more understand who I am and who I am with you, and that kind of thing.
And this is where I'll remind everybody again, you should see Disney's new movie, Raya and the Last Dragon, because we were getting ready to do this show, and we went and saw Raya last night, and I was like, oh my God, it's our show.
I really don't like Disney. I don't like promoting Disney things, but the storyline...
Just think of it as Pixar because they absorbed Pixar like a giant amoeba absorbing all good things around them. And so anything good coming from Disney, we can just say is the remnants of Pixar's soul still shining through.
Okay. Yeah, well, I think if you watch that movie... in context
with our current political climate,
but also the maps that we're trying to sort of sketch out here of understanding what's happening inside the brains of the characters in that movie.
How do you unhijack your amygdala?
Yeah.
And they do it. And I'm not going to tell you how because I want you to watch it and start crying like I did. But when you get to that moment and they choose... to not let their amygdala be hijacked anymore. Anyway, it's really good. Go see Raya and the Last Dragon.
Yeah, something we couldn't do on America's Most
I'm
Radio.
going to go see it.
Yeah.
You've now forced me.
Well, this is good research for your book.
Take a little girl with you. Like, go find some little girl, little boy. Like 8 to 12 is the best age range for these sorts of things. They'll be crying. You'll be crying. Everybody will feel great afterwards because you'll have had a good cry. It'll be a very wonderful experience. I love taking kids to the theater.
I want to tell you a story. And I think this applies, and I never really thought about this story in application. But this is, I think, one of those tools. People are like, how do you unhijack your amygdala?
Okay.
So my daughter, who's 21 now.
Oh, this is a great story.
When she was 3, I lived in this rainforest jungle shack in Hawaii, and I had kind of a toilet. It was a composting toilet, and it was attached kind of to the house. I didn't have windows, just screens. It's a jungle shack. So it's raining outside, and we're doing a puzzle. And she's 3. And at the time, we've been going to a lot of open mics. I was hosting a lot of events. Sometimes I say a little thing, and then people laugh. And I watched her looking around like, what's going on?
Why is everybody laughing at Dad?
He's saying some adult thing, and they're all laughing. So I could see her registering that I was doing something, but not really understanding what was going on. And so we're doing this puzzle. And so it's like me. Like, I just can't sit. If I'm doing something, I can pay attention. If I don't have anything to do, my brain starts to go off in 1,000 directions. So she's doing a puzzle, and I figured, okay, she's probably not listening to me because she's 3, and I like to hear the sound of my own voice. So I'm just going to tell this long-ass story. So she says to me, she goes, Dad, what's a joke? And I said...
Because you were doing them.
Because I was doing it, yeah. She goes, Dad, what's a joke? And because I had done stand-up comedy, I have long-winded answers to this. So I went off on some long-winded story about like, well, first you have to understand the mathematical formula for comedy, which is if you take the letter C and place it over time, anyway. So the formula was comedy is tragedy over time. And I gave her an example. I'm like, you and your friend are running around in the garden with your little My Little Pony unicorns, having a great time in your little fantasy world, and then you ran into a tree branch and you hit your head and you fell on your butt and you were really embarrassed. It took you out of your fantasy. Now you're crying because you're a 3-year-old. And then the next week, you're out playing in the garden again and you see that branch and you remember it, and you and your friend are laughing your ass off about what happened last week.
Remember that time you fell on your butt?
Yeah, and then you laugh about it because the immediacy of the trauma is not there. And so I said, so that's comedy. Comedy is tragedy over time, and a comedian or somebody who makes jokes is somebody who can decide how much time passes from the tragedy to when it becomes comedy.
This is where the hashtag too soon comes in.
So yeah, you can... You can shrink that time and make everybody uncomfortable.
People who tell Titanic jokes and they're like, oh, too soon.
Too soon, yeah. So the very next morning, and again, I'm just rambling on. I didn't think she was listening to a thing I was saying. The very next morning, I'm sleeping upstairs. She's sleeping downstairs. The aware parent hears the footsteps. Child is awake in the house. And then I heard her going to the bathroom, and then I heard this bam.
Bam.
And then she starts crying, and I'm like, oh, geez, what happened? So I jump out of bed. I'm trying to throw some clothes on to run downstairs, and it just stops dead silent. And I was like, oh, it's even worse. And so I come running downstairs, and she starts laughing her ass off. The cat has knocked over the shampoo bottle in the janky bathroom. She went down the stairs, classic banana peel joke, lands on her little butt, and she's laughing her ass off. And she turns around, she sees me coming down the stairs, and she goes, hey, Dad, that's comedy. And she started doing it from that point on.
So smart.
She started going like, how can I make this funny? Or
I get to choose how long.
I get to choose how long I suffer this.
That's funny.
And that's somebody managing their amygdala, right?
That's so well done.
I like that story. So cute.
Yeah. I remember that story now.
It's one of the good ones.
It was like it all happened within a very short period of time, and I was not. It surprised the hell out of me.
Yeah.
And these are the things that I think we should be able to teach our kids, not to be afraid, but how to know when you are afraid.
Yes.
And what to do about it, rather than if you're afraid, run away. Go into one of those flights, go beat up the enemy, or run and call the cops, or whatever the thing is, to be able to actually separate from that hijack and create. Why aren't we talking about that? Like, she was 3. We could totally be doing this in first grade, second grade.
Right. That's no doubt about it.
Or at home.
Right. More schools are starting to incorporate emotional wellness, emotional maturity, and like meditation classes for BBs.
Yeah, but here's one of the things that we're struggling with is that we're creating cocoons around ourselves.
Oh yeah,
feelings are bad,
which gives the amygdala more room, actual space, to become more and more important.
Oh, it's like the.
So explain cocoon.
Safe space.
I'm trying to do it in a way that won't get me in way too much
trouble.
I can do it in a way that'll get us in trouble. And I don't mind because it's our show.
Oh.
But there's the idea of the safe space, right? So like the college campuses have created this idea of the safe space. so that this college is a safe space. So you have somebody like that, the gay conservative guy from England who liked Yamanamanapolis, whatever his name was. Anyway, he's like this celebrity amygdala hijacker. He likes to go in and trigger people. So he's like a conservative, and he's a Christian, but he's also super gay, but he's not gay, and he's just a guy who liked to trigger people. And so he was banned from college campuses that had a safe space because they said he's a misogynist. He's these things, and he outwardly is that, and so we cannot have him in our safe space.
Okay.
Which then means that these folks don't ever get to have their ideas challenged, because that's what he was, a provocateur, and his idea was to challenge ideas and to have his ideas challenged, although he's on the stage, so he has the bully pulpit.
It's like a walking contradiction.
Yes.
Okay.
And so when you create this idea in an academic setting of a safe space, that means that I am not going to have my pre-existing ideas challenged.
In an academic
So I will be safe.
Okay.
Which means when you get out into the world, it's not a safe space. So how do we learn to have these conversations if you are not exposed to people you disagree with?
Okay, I have a parallel. Here's another interpretation of the cocoons are hurting us mentality. Say you're in a safe space, such as a college or something like that. And I can imagine, not ever having been a person who participated in some kind of safe space or been afraid, even though I am a woman, I'm a very large woman, so I've never really had the same sorts of fears of dudes at night as my other tiny blonde friends have. And that's just by nature of being a big animal walking down the street.
And where you were raised and the conditions.
Yeah, it's many factors. But I can imagine if you are in a place that you assume you will be safe, and you are a person who is concerned about wanting to know that you are safe, then you will be on high alert for it to not be working out.
Yes.
So it almost is like by trying to trust somebody that the space is actually safe, you're actually more nervous the whole time.
Yeah, it gives your amygdala more space to be more important. Probably too much space. So, like the other day, I have a new acquaintance, this guy who's becoming a friend, and he got up from the table. Now, I hope people don't. I believe in respecting people's space. I believe in respecting other people's bodies. I respect all those things. I just want to say this.
Yeah.
But he got up from the table and looked at me, and he said, I could tell he wanted to give me a hug.
Okay.
And he said to me, he asked if he could give me a hug.
Yeah.
Okay. Nothing overly wrong with that scenario, except why can't he just give me a hug?
Consent language
Many
is a new
reasons.
thing. Many reasons.
Okay.
Many reasons. But
so
I want to
you hear me.
Yeah.
I agree with those consent languages.
Yeah.
But there's also a whole nother side to that. We are creating a cocoon around ourselves that we have to learn a new way to allow our amygdala to respond harmonious with the other parts of our brain.
Well, it's also being able to see the other person.
Yes.
Like if you can read the other person, you don't have to ask. However, that was a story pre-coronavirus. It would be one thing. Post-coronavirus, it's another thing, because so many people have been traumatized
about touching.
That's right.
Right.
And
it is a new layer. It is a new layer now.
I'm not against all this consensual language for whatever reason, but and I'm not against us creating a more cocoon around ourselves. What I'm saying is we haven't learned yet how to teach ourselves. So how are we going to teach our kids who are going through a more safe environment, meaning they're creating these bigger cocoons than we ever did as kids? How are we going to understand how to teach them the skills that they're going to need to do what we're talking about? That's all I'm saying.
As far as the hug thing goes, in an ideal world, and so this is, I'm going to bring up like a common theme for post-orthodoxy is like intellectual privilege or psychological privilege.
Ooh, that's a
or
good one.
Emotional privilege. Because Dark and I had to get out of deeply indoctrinated groups to save ourselves, and because you have chosen to take on a lot of self-work and psychological study, we have a kind of psychological or psycho-emotional privilege that a lot of people do not have. And I recognize the bad taste that it puts in your mouth to acknowledge your own privilege, because it's almost like puffing yourself up. Like, I have white people privilege. And I don't want to be saying that I'm egotistical by acknowledging my psycho-emotional privilege, but I have worked really hard to spend a lot of time dialoguing with myself and out loud for my loved ones what's going on with me. And we are all, most of the people in my close circle are working on ourselves psychologically and emotionally all the time. And a lot of people, most people do not have the time or the energy or the awareness or the education or the support to be aware of why they're angry about something, let alone acknowledging that they are angry and can choose. And so,
because the anger is all of everything.
So when you say, why can't this guy just hug me? You are very grounded. You're centered. I've been with you in person. You are aware of your own vibes. You trust your own vibes, and you are aware of the vibes of people around you, and you pay attention to them, and you have the ability to pay attention to them, and you are aware that you are paying attention to the vibes of the people around you. These are multiple layers that a lot of people never have the time, energy, support, or education to get to. And so in an ideal world, you would be aware of whether you wanted to be hugged by this man, and he would be aware of whether he wanted to hug you, and then he would approach you, and he would be able to read from your body language that you wanted to hug him back, and trust that you meant you wanted to hug him back, and that you weren't just doing it because you were worried about ruining the friendship.
You could be fawning.
You could be fawning by hugging, but because we are all so trauma unaware, and also all terrified all the time of being unloved or something breaking down or whatever the primal fear is, you can't necessarily trust that the read you're getting off of me is how I actually feel about something. And I can't necessarily trust that you're even doing the work to read me, which is where consent language comes in. We are learning as a culture to verbalize our amygdalas because our amygdalas have been so fucked up.
Right. I'm not against that.
Why are you so judgy about the amygdala?
I don't think he's against it.
Are you anti-amygdala?
What I'm saying is that if we continue to create these cocoons, we have to learn a new way then to develop in these emotional, psychological issues that we have are different than when the cocoon wasn't there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how are we going to teach our kids if we don't yet know?
The world is changing so fast.
That's all I'm saying is that we're probably 2 or 3 generations away from knowing how to teach kids, quote unquote, what their safe space means and how to harmoniously live in a culture of safe spaces and have appropriate amygdala responses. That's all I'm saying.
Well, that's why I'm interested in your book because you are focusing also on this idea of trust and different kinds of trust. I mean, this is a thing that we have to get back to some foundationals because I think we all have ratcheted ourselves up into hyper partisanship and hyper divides. And I don't know if you're familiar with Matt Taibbi. I talk about him on this show a lot, even though I have not read his book. I read a lot of his stuff, and I've watched a number of his interviews and his videos where he's written a book called Hate Inc., as in Hate Incorporated, and he talks about how the business model of corporate media is to hijack our amygdalas. Yes. That is the corporate model. So it's no surprise that we're all hijacked because if you're watching, doesn't matter if it's Fox or MSNBC or CNN, or even to a lesser degree in PBS, the zeitgeist is about getting clicks and keeping attention, And feeling a threat in your environment, real or imagined, will keep your attention.
That's right.
And so our amygdala has been hijacked, and we feed that by paying attention to the people who are doing it to us. So this is why this is part of the reason that I wanted to start KBMF, the local radio station, is that if people had opinions or they were saying things, you didn't have to worry that that opinion was being informed by a pharmaceutical company or a weapons industry.
Right.
You could take it with a grain of salt that that's their perspective. But this is, I feel like, we can talk about learning to deal with our own amygdala, figure out how to have a conversation with it, figure out how to stop being hijacked. For me, one of the first things that I noted, that's I had to stop watching TV in a regular way, because it's almost like going to the gym. I was constantly having to detangle myself from getting drawn in, even if it as a critic.
Yeah.
So often I think we get high by talking about how bad the news is while we're watching the news. I know that's bullshit. I know that's not real.
Double, triple
I
high.
know, yeah, right. I'm smarter than this, but you're still entrained by that.
Yeah.
Because you're getting a high by thinking you're smarter than that.
Yep.
And I think that's part of the problem of that business model. Network called it decades before. Most people in the regular world knew about it.
Such a good movie.
I mean, looking at the sociopathy involved in getting ratings under the auspices of informing you about what's going on in the world.
Yeah, and let's not be naive about this either. The church is built on that.
Yes. Yes.
So
yes.
It's not just, mainstream media and politics. It's also the way you keep people coming back week after week to sit, in pews, is you get their amygdala hijacked so that they get addicted to that. And it's just the way it is,
Right.
Okay, well, now earlier, that one hypothetical atheist that stopped listening to you because you said you believed in God went, wait a minute.
He said, but
He could be critical of...
he said a bad thing about church.
Wait, what? What?
The hypothetical atheist.
Yes.
We'll get an action figure and sell it in our store someday.
Yeah. The hypothetical atheist, yes. Action figure.
Joseph,
I love that idea.
no, I'm trying to collect funny.
It
Sam is
doesn't
watching
bend
this, and
it.
I'm pretty sure he could create you.
It doesn't bend at the knees. All right.
Funny. That's kind of funny.
It's kind of a joke.
I'm
It's
trying.
more of a Catholic joke. But...
Oh, we knelt to pray.
Oh, okay.
In the evangelicalisms times, evangelical times.
I have a Freud action figure, and he doesn't bend at the knees either.
At the waist.
He doesn't bend at the waist. That's right.
Yeah.
Knees or
His
waist.
no, I think his knees.
He only bends the cigar back and forth to his
cigar.
mouth.
Yeah. What? Read into it what you will. So we're at the 2-hour mark. This was amazing.
Yeah, I had this was fun. You want to do this again sometime?
Yeah.
Every time. Yes, let's do it.
All right, and help us
We have to play with the other boys and girls.
Yeah,
but
help us
yes,
find
you should
some other
definitely come back.
smart folks to help us be smarter folks.
I will do that.
And
Okay.
I want to definitely say thank you to all of our lurkers.
Shoes.
We're always hearing about people who watch the shows but then don't say anything for various reasons, and we appreciate you even if you're not saying things. And thank you so much to the people that did say things this week.
And Tammy Strong watching us on the big screen.
Yeah,
It makes me
big
feel
screen. Feels kind of
she
important,
has,
right?
Yeah. A bigger screen somehow feels more important. I'll get my Freud action figure and keep him down here as well.
Sam Debris says sometimes a rigid Freud is just a rigid Freud.
Hey, Sam Debris, thanks for playing tonight.
Yeah, man. He's been tuning in. He's been involved.
Sam Debris should be... No?
No. No.
Okay.
I haven't had permission yet.
Welcome to season 2 of Post-Orthodoxy.
The one biggest, easiest, cheapest thing that you guys can do to help us is subscribe to our YouTube channel. Because if we get 100 people liking our YouTube channel, we can create youtube.com/postorthodoxy. And that's all my hype for tonight, folks.
Oh, also, if you don't want to do Facebook, you can always find us on Twitch and YouTube. And
Right.
if you like those things, like the whole Twitch, you can find a way to get an alert. So that you know
Sam
when
says
we're
we
on
have
air.
permission.
Oh, yeah?
So we've already had a bite for our first
Sevier Studios client.
created within, I'm not sure how we'll say it, produced by Sevier Studios.
Yes.
Sam Debris has been combing the internet for a horror podcast worth its salt and hasn't found one. And so if you know Sam Debris at all, you know that
He has to make
you're
one.
in for some really good horror podcast stuff coming up.
So he's going to watch a horror movie with a guest that week.
And then have critical dialogue.
Yeah, so this is a good, nice people in the film industry in general would appreciate this.
And by the way, horror movies are built around triggering the amygdala. Right?
Yes.
And we like it
And we
because
like it.
chemicals.
Because we
That's
can
right.
walk away from that.
Right?
Exactly.
Joseph, any parting favors?
Thank you.
Oh.
You guys are such great friends.
It is so nice to talk to you again and have such deep intellectual conversations too.
Yeah,
It was fun. Let's do this in a bar sometime.
Yeah, let's do that. Come down and see us.
Yeah.
Come down and see us next time you're in
Come
town.
back and see us. Come back and see us. Come back.
Thanks for being a guest and first of many times, hopefully. And we look forward to hearing about your next genius, smart person that we're going to talk to.
Woohoo!
All right.
Thank you, everybody else who's been listening to the show. Again, still looking for an editor so we can have these things tightened up and get rid of all my ums and
And
uhs.
put it in an audio form for people that drive long drives.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So
you know someone.
We don't have our closing video where we can just wave and then have the music swell, but just imagine that in the
We're
hearing.
going to do some bubbles. Okay, bye, guys.
Bye, folks.